We're back, y'all. It's me, Vince of Movemakers Philly. I'm here to rap at you, all right? You might consider it preaching a little bit. I'm all right with that, because I think I have some pretty high up sensibilities. Anyway, I'm here to talk about cool kids, and I'm very much invested in potentially, we'll call it a nouveau cool. Not the cool that the Breakfast Club generation grew up with, not the cool that my generation grew up with, however you want to look at it, whether it's the P. Diddy generation or the NSYNC generation, I don't know. But I definitely don't want us operating with that same sense of cool. And then there's also the cool of now, and that cool is kind of weird in its own right. It's kind of, in some ways, reactionary to some of the coolness that I grew up with. But my main thing is that I think that there is one solid, concrete, never let you down notion of cool. And that is being eclectic. So, how do we foster that type of nature, that type of characteristic into our young people? So that's to say, we no longer are encouraging them to just be jocks, all right, or wear the most trendy clothes, or to know the most trendy music, or the most trendy lingo. We're not encouraging that, okay, that singular mode of operation. And we're not also looking at the kids who are on the other side of the line as not being cool. Potentially the kids who are into STEM, or the kids that are into music and art. Oftentimes there's a stark line between these camps. And the idea is to bridge the gap. How do we bridge the gap? The other thing is, let's not deny it. Sometimes in some areas, coolness is identifying with a certain racial group or the culture of a particular racial group. And I think that ultimately can be damaging. It can create an isolation that produces confusion and a kind of chaos that we exist in now. So how do we get rid of all of that? Well, it's not easy. It's actually quite complicated. But I think it's all about the adults in a child's life. And I am the first one to say that it's not easy raising children. So my one suggestion as a non-parent is surround the children with an array of influences. The influences that are in the child's life should not be the same, okay? They should not look like you.
They should not talk like you.
They should not have the same profession as you. You need to surround your children with a variety of individuals who can help them become eclectic, cool individuals. And like I said, it's not easy. Some of us might live in communities that kind of isolate us from others who are different. And then also, we might live in a diverse community, but we've been trained to really only stick with those that we feel comfortable with. So we can't get around this. Our children mirror us. So do we want them mirroring this singular image, or would we like them to mirror this very diversified image? Okay, let's get personal. Let's talk about me and my difficulties and my struggles with coolness. I grew up as a herpetologist. What is a herpetologist?
Is it the study of herpes?
No, it's the study of reptiles and amphibians. So basically, from 5 until about 11 or 12, when all those weird things start to happen, I was really deeply into reptiles and amphibians. I could talk to you about poisonous dart frogs, or a gaboon viper, or I even bred leopard geckos. So these are things that people don't really know about me. I was part of the Philadelphia Herpetology Society. Think about that. I don't even know if it exists anymore. If it does, shouts for letting a little kid hang out with you. So I would go to reptile exhibitions. I also had a really good friend who was a zookeeper who would let me come to the zoo, and there was also the guy who ran the reptile department was cool with me too. So I just had kind of free range in the reptile amphibian end of the zoo. It was probably a liability, and so good looking out to all you guys who let me in. Definitely isn't happening now for any kids, but just think about that type of exposure. The unfortunate thing is, transitioning into my adolescence, there wasn't necessarily the adult group or the peer group that was super supportive in fostering the bridge between my desire to be more physical, my desire to be attractive, my desire to just fit in and throw the popular lingo. So I kind of lost this scientific journey and kind of moved more into kind of this cultural, aesthetic-based way of being. So I don't necessarily think that was good. However, I'm thankful for having diversity in other areas of my life. And what I'll say for myself is, I was somebody who grew up between all the different races, right? I obviously am black, ADOS, American descendant of slavery, and given my ADOS background, that creates a certain kind of complexity to my racial composition. But we're not going to get into that right now. The main point is this: my family was very supportive and encouraging to having a diversified experience as far as the people that I was surrounded by. That's clearly not always the case. I know this for a fact because I grew up around a lot of different people. And in some cases, I was that group's only black friend, or I was that group's only black friend who had friends who were not black, or I was that group's only dance friend, or I was that group's only friend that was a dancer but did other things. And I could go on and on and on and on. So I want everybody to take a moment to reflect. How is this relevant to me? Or how is this relevant to my child? Does my child have an eclectic lifestyle? Does my child have diverse exposures? And how will those exposures contribute to who they are becoming? So this is all pretty complicated stuff, but it's important to think about, right? And the last point that I'll make, I am a very dedicated ambassador of hip-hop dance culture. Now, take a look at me. Okay, after taking a look at me, I want you to go on to TikTok, I want you to go on to YouTube and Google hip-hop dance. Do they look like me? How about this? I'll get even more specific with you. Google Steezy. Does anyone look like me? I'll get even more specific. Google Steezy again. And this is not a knock on Steezy. I think they do excellent work. But hopefully if you are aware, you're catching my point here. Google Steezy. Do you see similar surroundings and backdrop as mine? Excellent. So, to conclude here, as I descend from my pedestal of fossilization, I have one more important question. What are you doing? What are we doing to encourage a more polychromatic community of young people? What are we doing to diminish the inclinations and actions that lead to a monochromatic way of being? Let's think about my generation. Let's think about the generation before. And let's consider how our actions and our way of being with one another has led to the current social climate. a social climate that has a lot of confusion, a lot of disorder. But if we get back to the basics, we'll see that training our children to be more eclectic in their tastes, their interests, their ability, and their affinities to people is probably the clear solution to a lot of the bull that's going on right now. Think about that. Well, since we've come to a very concise and very clear conclusion on the matter, I have a question. What do you see around me? Those of you who are knowledgeable might say, oh, split leaf philodendron. Or you might say, Monstera deliciosa. It is not either of one of those, but it is a kind of philodendron. Now, I'm a little concerned about this philodendron. When I got it about a year ago, it was nice and full. And it lost a few leaves as I kind of figured out what type of light it likes and kind of came up with a watering schedule. But we got it under the light that it likes, but it never really became too consistent with how it wanted to be watered. So, if anything, leave some comments. Maybe you know about this plant. Maybe you can look at it and say, hey, that's this type of philodendron. Don't write back to me and say split leaf philodendron, because it's not a split leaf philodendron, and it's not a Monstera deliciosa. So, how eclectic are you if you're watching this video? Help a brother out, trying to keep this plant alive. Just see over here, make some cuttings to see if they root and spring off. Yo, Vince Johnson, Movemaker Spilly, signing off. Peace.